Mama, is God real?
Is marriage for life?
Do we have to be baptized?
Is drinking really wrong?
Well, that's your interpretation.
Where do I come from?
Do we really have to have authority for what we do?
Where is God when I need Him?
Rise up, O men of God. His kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and in the night of wrong.
Hello, friends, and welcome again to the Shield of Faith, a program that is dedicated to discussing spiritual things and giving you Bible answers. My name is Wes Garland, and I preach for the Northwest Church of Christ in Clay County, Tennessee. And we also have with us, as always, Scott Gann.
Hey, Wes.
He is the preacher for the Philippi Church of Christ in Tompkinsville, Kentucky. And we also have with us Eric Pitcock.
Hey, Wes.
He is the preacher at the Gamaliel Church of Christ in Gamaliel, Kentucky. But friends, what we are going to discuss today is on the subject of tobacco use. You know, guys, whenever you just think about tobacco use, it's not something that's only out here in the world. Mm-hmm. But it's really very, very strong, even in the church itself. Mm-hmm. And, people think there's nothing wrong at all about using tobacco use. And it's just something that's not even going to condemn their soul.
It's looked at, and it's looked at in many respects among many people as being something that's very innocent,
right.
Something that's not very significant, something that we maybe a lot of preachers just overlook.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Maybe they don't ever talk about, maybe they don't ever address them. And so we do have this problem.
Well, that's funny how you mention preachers in this. I've even had discussions with preachers on this actual topic. Mm-hmm. And they look at me and say, Wes, you cannot say that it's sin, but they should not use it. Mm-hmm. Now, the question I've got to impose on them is, where are they getting this standard?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, whenever you think about it, there's no standard upon which they can say they shouldn't use it unless they are taking something from the Scriptures.
Right. Well, I think there's adequate evidence for us to look at and examine the Scriptures and prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that it's wrong to smoke. You shouldn't smoke. You should abstain from it. And if you use it, then what we're asking you to do is we're asking you to work on quitting. That's what we're asking you to do.
That's right.
We want to set forth these goals, if you are, and it's a substance that's hard to lay down.
It is.
And we're going to look at that, the aspects of that, and it's something that people just not going to give up right away.
Yeah,
but what we're going to do is, like we always do, we're going to look at the Bible.
Yeah,
that's right.
And see what the Bible has to say, because we do bring answer Bible questions with the Bible answers.
Mm-hmm. That's right. But before we actually get into the Bible, I really want to show you just some statistics, and I think they just speak for themselves.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Well,
every 1 hour.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just wanting to make a comment that today we see that the world is condemning smoking.
Yeah, the world doesn't want you to smoke.
No. The world will not let you smoke
that's right.
in buildings, public buildings. Right. It doesn't want you to smoke in restaurants. Anywhere you go, you see no smoking signs. You can't get on a public bus and smoke. You can't, there's warning signs all over the place about smoking. These tobacco companies, they have spent millions and billions of dollars advertising, getting people to stop smoking.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was by rule of court decision that they had to do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if the tobacco companies are advertising that, you shouldn't do it, I mean, that's kind of, that's as hypocritical as it gets.
Yeah.
And the world's telling us that we shouldn't do it, and it's bad for us. Then why can't we see that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, notice what the world's actually saying here. Every 1 hour, 150 people die from cigarettes. Mm-hmm. A day, 339 people die from lung cancer that's related to tobacco use. Every 5.6 seconds, somebody dies of tobacco use. Every 5.6 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people.
It is.
Yeah.
It
And then on top of all that, it is even going to an increasing rate that whenever it gets all the way up to year 2020, they are depicting that there's going to be 10 million people a year worldwide that's going to die from tobacco use.
Yeah. Well, that would bring about our first principle, I think, in that smoking is wrong because it's harmful to the body.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there are other principles that we're going to lay forth, but this will be the first one that I would start with. Number one, it's hurtful for the body. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 6:19-20, do you not know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who is in you, whom you have from God, and you're not your own. For you were bought with a price. Therefore glorify God in your body and in your spirit, which are God's. God bought your body with a price, and you are the Lord's. You use your
We're
body
not our own.
That's right.
No.
You're not your own. You use your body for the Lord's service. It's for the Lord's business, for the Lord's work. And you to treat your body. I believe God would have us to treat our bodies with respect and honor them, and to be able to use them for tools and to not destroy it.
That's right.
And to take care of it.
Right.
And you know,
To the best of our ability.
Yeah, many good people could have had longer lives had they not used tobacco.
Right.
You know, people could have lived. You know, just think about this, Wes. Think of the influence that people could have had in their homes if they hadn't died from using tobacco. Think of the influence they could have had in their communities, the impact they would have had. You know, and in just the tremendous difference that they could have made with the length of time they would have had to live had they just not used tobacco. And I don't know about you guys, but I have seen it by the bedsides of countless people that have died from lung cancer. Yeah. And I've yet to meet one. I've yet to meet one that has told me, I wished that I would have kept smoking. That everyone has always said, I wished I would have never started smoking.
That's the case. I lost a lot of my relatives. My grandmother, she withered away with cancer. She was a smoker, and it was contributed to her smoking. My sister, at an early age, she was a smoker, and she had heart complications. She had cancer, and she had a lot of things like that. But the biggest attributor was the smoking. My mother has cancer. That's 3 ladies in my family, not including me also. But, you know, she has cancer, and she smoked all of her life. But somewhere through that process, Lord willing, that she stopped. And so now that she's realized the damage that those things are done.
And so she's suffering the consequences of it.
Yes, right. I mean, it may not necessarily have been brought about by the type of cancer she has by that, but still, you're going to harm the body.
You're going to harm your body. And you know, people say, well, it won't happen to me. And, well, it's going to happen to somebody.
Right.
You know, and you know, we just that's the mindset that we have, and we have fooled, you have fooled yourself, and you have tricked yourself and manipulated your mind into thinking that it's not going to happen to you. Listen, you know, I've been touched by this, you've been touched by this, and it can happen to you.
Yes.
You know, I have, I've had cancer in the colon. You've had your
brain cancer.
Yeah. And while mine wasn't the result of tobacco, or wasn't anything that I'd done, you know, it just, you know, my mindset was, well, it's never going to happen to me. Well, the same thing applies to somebody who's using tobacco. They think, well, it's never going to happen to me. Listen, it's going to happen to somebody. And if it doesn't kill you from cancer, it's going to kill you from having a heart attack. It's going to kill you in some other way, in some other form. In some way, it's going to kill you if you keep on doing it.
Well, see, that was the reason that I was trying to quit. I used to dip, and for a long period of time. And I was trying to quit because of a young man the same age as I. He had dipped for the same amount of years that I did, and he got cancer in the tongue. It went straight to his brain, and he died. You know, and he was the same age as me, and so I was trying to quit. You know, and at the same time I got brain cancer. As that process was happening, and so you know you could see how it affects everybody, and people if they just thought about it, you know.
Every single major organ in the body is affected by tobacco use. Yes. Every single major organ.
Every single one of them.
And you know, you cannot use it and it not affect you and harm you in some way. It will.
Have you ever noticed this? Whenever the very first time that somebody ever, let's say, takes a dip, the very first thing that happens to them, their normal body response, they start gagging, they start choking. They even start spitting. They even come into the extent of even throwing up. That's a normal body's response.
It's made several people sick as a result of swallowing.
Yes. And even smoking itself. Have you ever noticed the very first puff that somebody takes, the very first bodily response to it is that they start choking
rid of it.
And exactly, just trying to get rid of it. But you know, being an EMT, I see people a whole lot that, I mean, I'm taking patients back and forth from the hospital and back and everything, and whenever it really comes down to asking them what their medical conditions are, they have certain medical conditions as maybe having lung cancer or COPD or emphysema or some of those things right there. And I ask them, have you smoked? Yes. Well, those things were actually leading up because of that smoking. If somebody's out here and they're going to try to tell me that it does not affect the body in some way, they are not honest with themselves.
Right.
That's right.
It also costs you, anytime you go to get insurance, health insurance,
Yes.
they ask you that question.
Yeah.
And your insurance premium will be more if you are a smoker.
Yes.
There's
And people-
places
that's right.
of employment that you cannot get a job there if you are a smoker or a user of tobacco.
Yeah.
I know several places
No-
that's like that.
No medical doctor in their right mind would ever recommend anybody using tobacco in any form.
Right.
No nurse, anybody in the medical community. I mean, the medical community is full of statistics. The evidence is overwhelming. It says it right on the side of the pack that it may cause cancer. It says that it's harmful to your health. Every piece of literature that we have that's ever been recorded on the subject of tobacco has all come back negative. And it's harmful, and it harms your body. And that's the first piece of evidence that we could use in describing that it's bad. But then the second one that we could use would be the fact that of the influence that's involved. I mean,
Exactly.
you have little children that they don't censor themselves as much as maybe somebody else was. But little children will go at somebody that smokes and they'll say, "Shoo, you stink because you smoke."
Yeah.
And and that's the
Yeah.
influence
It
that it
is.
has.
That is the truth.
My little
It
boy,
is.
he's 5 years old, and when he sees somebody smoking, he'll say, "Daddy, that man's smoking. That's bad." And I mean, he understands from 5 years old. Of course,
Right.
I have taught him godly principles, and he understands that's wrong. But at the same time, he understands that's not a good influence. He
Right.
understands that's harmful to his health. He understands that's bad, and he shouldn't do it at 5 years old.
Yeah.
And so, it's a bad influence.
Whenever we
It's-
think even about influence itself, influence is a really big thing to a Christian.
Absolutely.
Because Matthew 5:13 through 16, talking about that you are the salt of the earth, he says, and even if the salt loses its flavor, wherewith shall it be salted? I mean, what's going
Right.
to be the salt? He
If
says,
we lose
it
our
is
influence,
nothing.
and there's nothing worse. I mean, to me, I see somebody that's going down the road. I've seen people with oxygen mask on or those things in their nostrils and smoking a cigarette.
Yeah.
I just can't come to the understanding of why somebody
Would do
would do that.
Yeah.
And you see people, based upon influence, would I take a cigarette, would any rational thinking person take a cigarette and give it to their child and
They
say,
wouldn't.
okay, I want you to
Absolutely not.
start smoking just like me?
No.
We have characteristics within us that we
Yeah.
would like to instill
Yeah.
in our children.
Yes.
But that would not be one of them.
Even the
Yeah.
smokers themselves will do that.
Yes. And
If smoking's not all that bad, and smoking's not all that wrong, and you're trying to justify smoking, then why don't you want your grandchildren to smoke? Why don't you want your children to smoke? Why don't you give them cigarettes? Why don't you encourage them to smoke? Nobody in their right mind
Absolutely.
that is
Absolutely.
rationally thinking would want their children to smoke, would want their grandchildren to smoke, would want anybody to smoke, because they all understand not only the health effects of it, but the influence that's involved. They understand that it's a poor influence. And let me just ask you something. I mean, brethren, how could I stand in the pulpit every Sunday, every Lord's Day, and tell people how to live their lives when I'm controlled by substance, and whenever I have this substance that is a bad influence? And how can I do that? How can I justify it? I can't.
You can't.
I
You
simply
can't.
cannot do it. How can I tell somebody, how can I correct somebody and encourage somebody to do something different whenever I have
doing
this?
the same.
I'm doing the same thing.
You have this vice that's
that's right.
got a hold of
That's
you.
right. It is a bad influence.
Well, just talking a little bit about the health problems and now also the influence. I found this on the internet, friends, and I showed this to you all as well. Whenever you really get into really what is all in just one cigarette, and by the way, if you go to our website, shieldoffaithtv.com, I've even got a hyperlink going to actual providers of Camel cigarettes into explaining really how much individual items are actually found in one cigarette. And so, friends, if you're really interested in that, go to our website and see that for itself. But I want to show you this right here. Whenever you really look at a cigarette, it's known to have 43, or at least 43, carcinogens, which is cancer-causing agents that are found just in one cigarette. But upon this, just look at some of these different items that are here. Things found in sewer gas, road surfaces, things rocket fuel, candle wax, poisons even used on death row, lighter fluid, pesticides, rat poison, radioactive gas, toilet cleaner, nail polish remover. Now think
And
about
so
this.
on and so on.
Yeah,
and
all
on and
these
on you
different
go,
things.
yeah.
This is just a great example.
There's nothing that's in a cigarette that is beneficial for someone.
No.
That's right. But just think about this. If we were to individualize each one of these things, let's say if I was to go ahead and get you just a little bit of rat poison and say, would you please ingest this into your body? You'd say, no, I ain't that stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Let's wrap it up into a white and brown container and put a little bit of tobacco inside of it. Now give it to you, and you'll do it in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that?
Well, it's going to lead us up to, I think, our final
biggest argument.
our biggest argument on it. But also, you know, we think about that. Why would somebody want to put that in their body? You know, but you ask, like we were talking about, you ask the influence principle. You ask most people, do you think that, do you wish you had never started smoking? Most people say, yeah, I
Yes.
wish I'd never started it.
Yeah.
You know, or I wished I didn't do it.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Well, the Bible teaches us, he that knoweth to do good and does it not is
Yeah.
sin.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there that's in that situation. They wish they had never started. They have the habit.
Yeah.
And
How many father and mothers you think's listening to us today that's saying to themselves, I don't want my children to smoke, I don't want my grandchildren to smoke, but yet they themselves smoke.
right.
And so they tell them on the one hand to not do something, but they themselves are partakers of that. There's a word in the Bible that is used for that. It's called a hypocrite.
Yes, it
and,
is.
And that's exactly what that
I
person
mean,
is.
we just
I've
have to
even-
we have to call things out the
That's
way the
right.
Bible teaches,
Yeah.
and so that's why we're here.
I've even
to-
been told of doctors who have told their own patients to say, okay, you need to stop smoking. If you don't stop smoking, it's going to kill you. It's going to lead you straight to death and everything. You need to stop. But,
And I've heard of
but,
many people
guess
say
what?
that-
But guess what? The guy, the patient, walks out and finds the doctor behind the hospital or the doctor's office out there smoking a little cigarette.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a hypocrite.
And that would bring us probably to our strongest argument. It's the addictive power.
There's
of it.
many
The
there's
addictive
many
power.
great arguments
Yeah.
that we could use. Stewardship.
Yeah.
You know, how much is the cost of those things today?
I was just up there and-
It's
I was just-
outrageous.
Yeah.
I was just up there in Walmart, up there in Tompkinsville the other day, and I was looking at the price of just cigarettes itself. And they're between $4 to $6 a pack. And if you want to get a carton,
About $50-some.
about $50.
Yeah.
Now imagine, brethren, what that money can actually do for the Lord.
Yeah. And what it could do for anybody that smokes, how much it could free up.
Yeah.
Our
That's right.
economy is drained,
Yeah.
you know, and people's talking about bills and all this kind of stuff. You know, what could that free up if you give up this habit?
What a shame it is that we have people in the church that they'll go out and they'll spend $50, $100 a week on cigarettes.
Yeah.
Something that's just gonna burn up, evaporate, doesn't do them any good.
Only does harm.
Only does harm. It's going to kill them eventually. It demolishes their influence. And yet, come in on the Lord today when we're supposed to worship God in spirit and truth, and put in $5, $20 into the plate. They've actually spent more on cigarettes that week than
Right.
they have, and that's a shame.
It
That's
is.
something
They
to
have
think
spent
about.
more
You know,
on things
Yeah.
to kill themselves.
the stewardship principle.
Yes.
You know, in that they would spend more money on cigarettes than they would spend giving to the Lord. And you know, I believe if they cost $100 a pack, they would be people out there foolish enough
To buy
them.
Yeah.
And the reason being
That leads
because-
up to our last principle.
But
The
I've
reason
even
being-
noticed, even up there in New York, one pack of cigarettes right now are running around $10 to $12 a pack, and they're still booming.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and the reason people would do that, the reason people would buy them,
It's because
there's
of their addiction.
Because they are addicted. That's our strongest argument.
It
That-
is.
I mean,
it is.
we
People think
yeah,
that the health issue.
Yeah, that's not
but,
it.
But
That's not it.
I
mean,
moved past that.
I have too. I mean, that's a good argument. Yeah, that's true. Yet they are terrible for you. But that's not the main reason it's wrong. That's it's a stewardship issue. Yeah, it's a bad stewardship. But there are a lot of things probably in our lives that we do that we're poor stewards in.
Right.
That's not the main issue with smoking. It is the addiction.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you think about this, you think about something that has a stronger addictive power than cocaine.
Right.
And we know that, and the medical community has come out and said that cigarettes and the use of tobacco has a stronger addictive power than the use of cocaine. In other words,
and
it would
also.
be easier to quit cocaine, it'd be easier to quit heroin than it would be. Now, you can't tell me that somebody could justify using something, a substance, that is addictive as cocaine. That's just absurd.
Right.
And
they would condemn that.
They would condemn that.
But they're taking in something
that's right.
harmful.
That's right.
Not as maybe not as harmful, you know, as the cocaine would be, but it's still harmful.
Their lives become controlled by it.
Right.
I think it'd be a very important thing right here to just go ahead and reinforce. We're not only talking about cigarettes.
Right. Yes.
We're not only talking about dipping. We're even talking about any type of tobacco use, whether it be skull, cigars, pipe smoking, all these other different things, whether it even be
in all
chewing.
forms. In all
Yeah,
forms.
in
all forms.
Any
forms.
type of tobacco.
That's right.
Yes.
All of it's
Yes.
addictive.
Every
You know,
bit of it is.
yeah, all of it's addictive, and you know, we see the addictive power of it. You know, people say, "Well, I'm not addicted to it," but then you see these same individuals. They're going around in the hospital. They're pulling their oxygen tank and their little thing. They're wheeling it around, and they go outside and they smoke.
Right.
And the doctor comes in. They say, "If you don't smoke, you're going to die." And they say, "Well, you know, got to die somehow." And they try to justify it, and so they keep on smoking, and you know, it has a hold of them.
Right.
And
you know, we have that scripture, 1 Corinthians 6 in verse 12, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. And it says, but all things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. You know, we cannot be brought under the power of anything. We talked about that great principle that we're not our own.
that goes across the board.
Goes across
Anything.
the board with
Any.
anything.
The power of any.
Anything.
Tobacco, anything.
Anything, any addictive substance.
Coffee, I mean, it goes across the board. The power
Absolutely.
of anything.
Right.
And so, you know, we apply that principle
this
to
is
smoking.
I'll tell you, this is a great principle, I think, too, also to understand that we are servants whom we obey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Either sin unto death or
Romans chapter
obedience
6.
unto righteousness. Right.
Yes.
Romans chapter 6, verses 16, 17, or they're around about in there. So if we are people that are addicted to tobacco use are slaves to the
Tobacco.
use of
Yes,
tobacco.
that's
They
right.
are slaves. I would challenge anyone
That's using it.
that's using tobacco today. If you say that you're not addicted to it, quit for a week, for a month. That's just a short period in your life. Quit and see how it affects you.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever noticed this? Any time that you ever bring up tobacco use to a smoker or a dipper or whoever it might be, have you ever noticed how they get very offensive?
They get offensive and they start denying that they're addicted to it.
Exactly.
That's
Right.
right. That's the first. That's kind of ironic because that's the first symptom.
sign.
That's the first sign of addiction. Is
Yes.
denial.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that's one of the first things they'll do is I'm not addicted to it, and they try to justify it in some way. Well, they are addicted to it.
Right.
They are controlled by it.
I'm not addicted to it. I just like to do it.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
That's a way of trying to get out. That's just an
Yeah.
excuse of saying I don't want to say I'm addicted to it because if I do, that will condemn me. So I just say that I like it.
Yeah.
But
There's a illustration that I like in what you use in dealing with this
Oh.
whole tobacco issue, and I'd like for you to.
Yeah, I heard
to-
I heard the illustration given one time about an individual that had a problem with cornbread, and he'd get up in the morning and he would have him a piece of cornbread, and well, after he would have his piece of cornbread, he would drink his coffee, and then he would have another piece of cornbread. Well, then he would be on his way to work, and as he was going to work, well, he would have a piece of cornbread. He would get to work, and he would, before he started work, he'd have a piece of cornbread. During break time, as he had 15 minutes to go outside, he would have a piece of cornbread. At lunchtime, he would eat his lunch, and he would immediately go outside after he get done eating. He would have a piece of cornbread. He would do the same thing in the afternoon when he would get a break. He'd have a piece of cornbread. On the way home, as he drive home from work, he would have a piece of cornbread. He'd get home and he would sit down on his sofa and he would relax and he would have a piece of cornbread. And then he would have his supper and he would drink his Coca-Cola and he would have a piece of cornbread. Well, before he would, he would get Sunday morning, he would get on the Lord's Day, before worship, he would have a piece of cornbread. He would go in, they would have the Sunday school, and then right after Sunday school, he would rush back outside, but between Sunday school and worship, he would have a piece of cornbread. And then he would go back inside, and after worship, he just couldn't wait to get outside and have another piece of cornbread. This man was completely controlled by cornbread. And we think of this man, and we think, what a pitiful man to be controlled.
We look at that person and we think, that's outrageous.
I think that's a perfect example, really.
I think it is.
They're controlled.
To really see
to think
how
of
far
to think that
goes.
a man is controlled by cornbread. Folks, that is exactly what happens to somebody that's addicted to tobacco.
Absolutely.
That's right.
They use it in those
That's right.
same ways, and it controls their lives. Their life revolves around that, and they are addicted.
Well, every addiction, your life revolves around the addiction.
Yeah.
Take a person that's out of, doesn't have any cigarettes or doesn't have whatever they're using, any tobacco product. You know, if they're running out, you know, you see people that they get so excited they can't control themselves, and they'll drive 100 miles. I've heard of people that no stores was open. They drove 100 miles to the next biggest city just to get some cigarettes, and you know, in the middle of the night. It's just, now what drove them to that?
Addiction.
The addiction.
addiction.
The addiction.
Why is it that people get cranky and have attitude whenever they quit? It's because the addictive power of it. They're having withdrawal symptoms.
Yes.
And you know, we certainly know and see that, you know, the addictive power, the power that it has on our health, the power that it has in our stewardship. I want you to just think about this as you know, you're fixing to close, but as we think about, if you were to go to the store and, you know, and you were to see on a package of meat and it had a label on it that said, this red meat will more than likely give you cancer. This red meat had a big warning label: red meat will give you cancer.
People wouldn't touch it.
They wouldn't touch it. If you had on the over in the pinto bean pinto bean section, they had on every can of pinto beans they had this product will give you cancer. Nobody would touch. You wouldn't.
Right.
Nobody in the right mind would eat pinto beans. Nobody in the right mind would eat anything that had that on it, because they understand. You know, I have the choice to abstain from that. Therefore, I want to do that. Well, the same thing happens to tobacco. Right on the side of the pack, it says that this product may cause cancer, but yet you're going to tell me that you're going to inject that into your body day in, day out, and that it's not addictive, and that it doesn't have control over you, and that you're a good steward, and that it's not having any influence on your health. That's absurd.
The Bible says there's one thing
honest.
that we can be addicted to. We can be addicted to the ministry of the saints.
That's right.
That's the King James Version. That's the only thing that we can be addicted to.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great principle. We summed it up.
Yeah,
If you can't get that, it's pretty clear.
That's right.
Well, guys, thank y'all so much again for being on the program with us. But whenever we really think about the Scriptures, friends, you see that it is sinful. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It is sinful in any way you look at it. But if you go on our website, you'll find some free tracts on this subject. All you got to do is go there, print it off, and make as many copies as you want. But until next time, friends, may God bless. Just think about it.